Hello everyone, happy Valentine's Day. I haven't featured an orchid in a while, so I thought that this one would be perfect given the timing. I haven't seen this orchid coined as the Valentine Orchid, but I will unofficially dub it as so. It's so perfect as the Valentine Orchid because it blooms right around Valentine's Day. And it smells like fresh cut roses, and the color of the flower is iconic of the brilliant hot red found on Valentine's Day. And this orchid is, drum rolls please, is Cattlianthe or LC Jewel Box Dark Waters. It's an old classic favorite that was hybridized by Stewart Orchids in 1962. The parents of this cross are Guarianthe, aurantiaca, Cattleya, anzac. Originally, it was classified as an SLC for Sophronites, Leia, and Cattleya, and then it got reclassified as a Cattlianthe or LC. There are 3 orchids in the Jewel Box Hybrid collection. There may be more, but I have only found 3 in my research. One is the Dark Waters that we are focusing on this video, and that's a deep red. The next one is Scheherazade, and it's a brighter red than the Dark Waters, and it has a yellow in the throat. The third one is called Orange, and you guessed it, the color is orange. And all 3 have the same growth habit. It's compact, bifoliate, and it stays short. About 4-inch tall as an adult. Now, I've seen many people describe it as a compact grower. I don't consider it as a compact because it tends to grow in a clumping manner, but it's not upright. And sometimes the pseudobulbs sort of lean sideways, and the leaves are disorderly since it has a twist and a curl to it. So a little history of my plant. I got it in 2019. It was probably 2 years old, judging from the growth rate. It didn't have any signs of spent bloom, but most of the mature pseudobulb had a tiny dried up sheath as if it was trying to force out a potential bloom. As for lighting, since it's a Cattleya hybrid type, I gave it fairly strong, bright filtered light, and many times direct morning light. And sometimes, unintentionally, I have left it in afternoon direct light for a short period of time, hence the sunburn on the leaves. I think you're okay if you give it all day filtered western window light and no direct morning light actually needed. It's a fairly easy bloomer, I do believe, so you can take it easy on the lighting. The leaves are more tender than the typical, more purebred Cattleya, so don't give it as much light as you would a typical Cattleya. I noticed that damages to these leaves are not as forgiving as the thick Cattleya leaves. The jewel box leaf, when it's damaged, it tends to turn yellow quickly and then brown and just falls off. Whereas the typical Cattleya leaves, sometimes with burn mark, it can repair itself and it's fine again with a little bit scarring. As for watering, I have mine in clay pebbles, so I have to water it more frequently. I use city water because it's easy for me to just conveniently use the hose. In the summertime, almost every day, at least every other day, I spray with a hose. In the wintertime, every 4 to 5 days. I do have to soak it for about 30 minutes once in a while when I see the bulbs are shrinking a little bit and it needs to be rehydrated. Since the jewel box orchid has a fairly large pseudobulb that holds reserve, you should err on the dry side and keep an eye on the pseudobulb to tell you what the plant needs. The media I use is clay pebble, of course, and I've gone all clay pebble because I just don't want to repot every year, and I feel like there's more damage to the orchid if I have to repot every year or every few years even. But I think recently I noticed that I need to add more sphagnum moss to make my life easier, especially in the winter time, since my region is very warm and most of my orchids are continuing to grow year-round. As for fertilizing, ideally, every time you water, you should give it a little weak fertilizer, but I don't, like most people probably don't, because we all get a little lazy about mixing up the fertilizer and spraying. Since I spray with a hose to water my orchids, it's just too convenient to do a quick watering instead of fertilizing every single time. And so I treat all of my orchids the same way. It takes me about 10 to 15 minutes to water all my orchids with a hose. I do often come back and do it the second time, since the first watering is considered the priming to get the roots wet to take in the water better the second time. Now, on days that I do fertilize, my routine is to wet the orchid first, spray the fertilizer, then I come back again with the hose on a misting setting and generously mist to prevent any of the fertilizer burn and to flush out any unwanted deposits. As for blooming, how to get it to bloom, like I said, it's a really easy grower, and I believe that it will bloom easily as long as it's healthy. So you can tell when the leaves are mature. It's when the sheath at the middle starts to form. And so in its third year, you may see the sheath forming, but the orchid is not strong enough yet or old enough yet to force out a bud, and that's okay. I believe it's about 5th year or so before the orchid is a blooming size, start from seedling. And I would give it higher light if you want the bloom to have a brighter, brilliant red, and lower light for a deeper red. There's a balance, though. If you don't give it enough light, then the orchid may not bloom. 2 blooms on a young plant is typical. Clusters of 5 or even 6 is possible on an older plant I've seen pictures of. I hope mine gets to that cluster of 5 to 6 blooms. As for the fragrance, it smells like fresh cut roses, but not very strong, just a hint of it. The buds take quite a long time to form, as I remembered, but I'm thinking for buds to take a long time to form, hopefully that means blooms will stay a long time as well. So, but I will leave a comment on the video at a later date to let you all know how long this bloom is lasting. One more thing I realized that you may encounter when growing this orchid is when it's in bloom, or in bud, when it's in bud. You may have to continue giving it a fairly high light for that bud to form well, because during the winter time, most of us grow it indoors, unless you are, further south than zone 9A, which I'm not. So I had to keep it in a very bright window for the buds to develop well. Well, that is all for now. I am signing out. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all have a good Valentine's Day. If you run across this particular orchid, this would make a great gift for any special friend or significant other. Or if you happen to have the plant and want to give a cutting to someone, it makes a great Valentine's Day gift as well. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.